live and direct, live and direct. We are here. I'm Abs of October Red, but never mind me. I'm joined by two special guests. We've got Hot Shot in the middle, aka Dwayne Sinclair, which is part of the Buatsi management team, and we've got Savage Dan on behalf of Boxer. So good evening, and thank you so much for joining me because I know everyone's busy. I get it, but you made time. So, guys in the chat, if you could big up our guests and say thank you for joining us this evening. Gents, Hot Shot, I'll go to you first. How you keeping?
I'm all right, but like you're saying, just busy, and I tried to get to so that I'm not driving, but I got 9 minutes before I'm near where I need to be, so I thought, I'd rather not be late. Let me just jump on and then get the ball rolling, and then I'll stop when I can stop, because I got it in a holder as well, so it's not dangerous. I'm not breaking any laws or anything
Yeah, yeah.
like
We don't do any
that.
ratting on here. You're all good. You got someone
Yeah.
holding the phone and you're good. You're just talking. Yeah, we're nice. We're nice.
Come on.
Savage, how's it going?
I'm alive. I'm in Cardiff now. Um, just trying to have a quiet one, man. Just trying to have a quiet one.
You quiet one.
I'm trying.
We're not even going to go there. Let me just pick up all the chat because obviously we know why we're here. We're going to cut to the chase. But you know what? Jamal has been on my case. I've got Jamal here. He says, "Can you ask what's happening with Natasha Jonas?" Savage, I'm just going to lay that one out, and then I'm just going to
Yeah,
say
she'll be
to
back out.
everyone.
She'll be back out soon. I mean, when she was out Jan 20th, I think it was, in Liverpool. I thought she'd probably have tried to be out a couple of times, more before the end of the year. Not sure exactly what's been the hold up here and there, but I know she's out soon.
Okay. Are we looking at a rematch with Michaela
The
Mayer?
thing is with Natasha, she's got so many options. That might be one of the things. She has a lot of options. Obviously, she got the rematch with Michaela, but then she can that. I mean, obviously, she can jump up and down between a couple of those weight divisions, which means she has not necessarily the pick of the litter, but she can pick whatever she decides to pick.
Okay. Well, we can run into that a bit later, but I've got to say salutations to everyone in the chat. Danny from Fight Fan TV. Yo, we're inside. Big up Abs, Dwayne, Sinclair, and Savage Dan. That's Danny, which is Craig Richards' cousin. Joseph Fringpong, I see you put up the fire emojis. That's me telling everyone that will be with you shortly. Moles, good evening to you. Daniel, big up all. Due to be a great one, and boxing pound for pound Jack is a big. I've got to give this one to you, Dwayne. Boxing pound for
Yeah.
pound Jack is a massive Joshua Buatsi fan. Joshua Buatsi can
Oh,
beat
wicked.
everyone according to Jack. Jack's UK but lives in America now, so a big
Yeah, I
fan.
heard no
Big
lies
fan.
from Jack there. Shit.
Yeah, HC Pod. Look, you've got your originals on here, Savage. They're coming over from the HC Pod crew. I was watching that the other day, actually. You lot
I
are
haven't
funny.
been at it for ages, though. I don't think.
It came up in my feed the other day on TikTok.
I'm
You
hearing
was
that.
on some madness again.
Is it?
But we ain't even gonna go there. Boxing pound for pound, Jack said that Tunde's putting out spiritual quotes of himself on X. It's looking like duck time. And he puts that with the sweaty emoji. No problem, Jamal. We've got a question here. Let me have a look. I want to keep the questions for a bit. Right. We've got to come here, and what I need to do is say thank you to Dwayne. Dwayne's a first time guest. Dwayne's someone that's been around, a professional boxer himself, experienced in the sport, but he's kind of like you've jumped onto like the management side. But what caught my attention to you is somebody sent me a meme that you'd made where it's you and Buatsi, and there's like either pigeons or ducks or whatever, and some crazy stuff that you're putting out on IG. Talk to us about that, Dwayne, because I know you're ride or die for Josh.
You know what it is, yeah? Um, many years since Josh and Yard they turned pro. They turned pro roughly around. I think Yard was a little bit before Josh, but roughly around the same time. And their careers were kind of compared, and people was liking them to each other and doing fantasy fights and whatever. Throughout that time, um, Yarde's team, well, I wouldn't even say Yarde's team, was Tundi love to kind of disregard and belittle Josh, so to speak, and mention his name a bit too freely. Now there's time to us to put pen to paper, disappearing. So excuse after excuse. So I thought, you know what? We've been quiet for too long, and Josh is always quiet. I told Josh, man, I'm not being quiet no more. I was watching a podcast, listening to a podcast where they're like, oh yeah, talking about Josh. Oh, no one don't speak for Josh. I said, I messaged in. I said that's because Josh does the talking himself with what happens between the ropes. But I thought, you know what? All the time that they've been chatting, I will gladly do War of the Words. I'm an educated young man, so we can do War of the Words, but you need to quantify the stuff that you're coming out with. They like the sound of their voice, don't they? They say a lot of stuff that has not got any substance, but the listeners and the fans and the supporters, they will believe what they're saying because they don't know any different. So now that it's time to put pen to paper, they've gone silent. So let's start talking.
Savage, I gotta run it over to you, Joshua Buatsi. I'm a fan of his, always have been. He took that step over from Matchroom to yourselves, and it was like, yeah, he's only going over there to fight Dan Aziz. That was what was coming out.
Is that what was coming out?
That's what was coming out. Look, he's only going over there because it's an easy in-house fight to make with Dan Aziz. Then obviously he had his first fight with Boxer, and then he fought Dan Aziz. But one of the things that Joshua Buatsi spoken about quite heavily, he wanted to be active. He wanted to be fighting. We've seen him kind of like shelved. What's happening from the Boxer side? Because obviously DUANE said, look, we're good to go. Papers, good to be signed. What's going on? And I've got to ask from obviously the Boxer point of view.
I mean, everything's good to go on our side. I think, like, as soon as Josh came over here, it's a big signing. Like, from the moment we signed him, we went Croydon Box Park, and you kind of make a big fuss about it. And like, contrary to what a lot of people think or believe, he wasn't signed with, that's an opponent for Dan Aziz. Obviously, some things make sense when they just make sense, and eventually it did make sense. And it was a good fight, and everyone enjoyed it, and it was good for Josh, and it was good for Dan. It kind of benefited everybody that happening anyway. But it's always been a case of, all right, what's next? Is it a world title or is it Yarde? And that's always going to be the question for Josh. No matter who he fights, and almost no matter who Anthony Yarde fights, they're kind of on a collision course, whether they like it or not. They've always been on one for like the last 5 years. It's destiny. It was always going to happen. But now it's here. Our side of this was agreed, signed, waiting. The only hold up is on the other side. Obviously, we know Yarde's in a situation on his side, but nothing to do with us. We're ready to go. Box is ready to go. Josh is ready to go. Whatever's stopping this is on the other side.
When you look at frustrations, and I ask like DUANE, when you look at frustrations, and we've spoke off camera a couple of times, and I'm like, is he doing the right thing? Shouldn't he have boxed? Shouldn't he have fought Dimitri Bivol? And how is his career going? Because he's someone of high caliber. Somebody, is the Olympic boy, is the one that's destined for great things. Joshua Buatsi, destined for great things. This is what we've all said. This is probably one of the reasons why I was a fan for him to start off with. But then it's almost like yet again, and albeit this time you can't put no blame on him. Mm-hmm. But it's like, what has actually happened with Josh's career? Because it's like you start to see it with the fans, and I'm a fan. We slowly start to lose faith in the boxers.
Yeah. See, what that question you've asked is very good. It actually ties in with what Dan was just talking about. So basically, what happened was, first of all, that rumor about Josh signing to fight Dan, that was started by Eddie Hearn, standard. And the thing is, Eddie Hearn talks with such confidence, people will just believe him. Yeah, he's very good at what he does. Even like working with him, you can't badmouth him. Yeah, he's good at what he does. So when he said that, everyone ran with it. That's basically what happened. He said that in an interview, and everyone just ran with it because he said it. That's a fact. Now, what happened with the Dan thing? I'm gonna go
Yeah.
back. Is
Mm.
it just simply that you said because of Josh being inactive, Dan just caught up, and it was literally people. It was number one and number two in the world boxing each other. It wasn't just a fight. It was literally WBA number one and WBA number two. So just because they were both local boys that knew each other, it was actually a world level fight. So that's all that happened. Dan caught up with Josh being inactive, and so it was a fight like Dan just said, a fight that Aziz and Buatsi that had to happen because if they didn't, they're both going to drop in the rankings. They don't fight, they're going to drop, and they both worked hard. Like you said, he was an Olympian, he's done it. Forget just the pro stuff. He's done the graft since the amateurs, and he's kept consistent. So with the Bivol thing, where he turned down the Bivol fight, that wasn't well. I can say it wasn't Josh. That was a team. Like you say, you got your management team, promoter team. The promoter at that time was concentrating on Bivol Canelo rematch. Yeah, they didn't want anything else. Bivol Canelo rematch and a couple other fighters. When they offered the Bivol fight,
Yeah.
it was at a voluntary basis. That basically means this is the money we're offering you, take it or leave it. But like you just said, he's done the graft from a child all the way through GB, got an Olympic medal. You need your worth. He was number one for about 2 years at that point. Why are we not mandatory? Why are we going to take a voluntary shot? A voluntary shot at a title is for somebody that's probably number 15, number 10, where they're a little bit away from getting that mandatory spot. Like, for example, Spider, when he boxed Bivol, he just won the British title. So he's a little bit away from a world title shot, but they offered him a voluntary. You'll be dumb to not to take it. But if you're number one in that division, in that organization, why are you taking a voluntary title when you're right there for a mandatory? And to get put back at the back of the queue. Plus, at that time, Bivol, even to now, he's one of the pound for pound number ones. Yeah. He was offered 4 weeks' notice on 2 occasions. Why would you box somebody of that caliber with 4 weeks' notice? Plus, remember, at that point, Josh had only boxed once a year for 2 years. So
That
he's
was
not active.
madness.
Not active with 4 weeks' notice to box one the pound for pound. That just beat Canelo, the world's number one face of boxing. He just beat him. And you're going to take that fight on 4 weeks' notice being inactive. That's ridiculous. So on the day that we went over to sign to Boxer, again was offered the fight again with 4 weeks' notice. On the morning, which was actually Josh's birthday, offered a fight again. 4 weeks notice. So of course, if you're gonna take a fight, you're gonna want to do it with the best, with your if you've earned your spot to be number one, you're gonna give yourself the best chances of winning. Like even Spider, he had the best shot. He was active. He just won the British title. Then his next fight was a world title. Why would you say no? You've been boxing. You see what I mean? Lyndon Arthur, he just won that IBO. His next one is a shot at a legitimate world title, so to speak. Why would you say no? You've been active. Josh was inactive. So it was like they was offering it just as a tick box exercise. Because one, you wasn't getting your just dues by getting the mandatory shot, where there's more caveats to it. You got more entitlements to different things as a mandatory rather than just
Educate a fool with that. Educate a fool. I'm going to take me as a fool here. Educate me.
okay. Yeah. So with a voluntary, you get what they're offering you. That's basically it. You might be able to bargain a little bit, but you get what you're offering. With a mandatory, you get a particular split, 60-40.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get that split. So if the fight's worth, if the event is worth 12 mil, and that fight takes 4 mil for that particular fight, you're gonna get 40% of the 4 mil.
Okay.
As a voluntary, they will say, okay, the event is 12 mil, that fight is 4 mil, we're going to give you 50 grand. we're going to give you 200 grand. Yeah, take it. But you know you're worth 40% of that 4 mil. Why are you going to take that? After you've been working so hard, why would you take that? So as much as Josh wanted to fight, I've been there since he was 15 years old. You've done your graft. You need your money's worth. You need your worth. You can't just take it for the sake of what it looks like, because the truth will come out when it needs to, like what's happening now. We didn't need to make noise. You can say what you need to say. The real die-hard boxing people know what's happening, and it started to drip out. But it is what it is. We're not here to war of the words, because when the bell rings, he does the talking. But like someone said on another podcast, no one's talking for him. I will talk for him because I know, like, and I ain't got here to mince my words. There's a lot of people that like the sound of their own voice just for talking's sake. It's long. It is long.
So when you look at that, Savage, how do you see that? Because this, like the voluntary and the mandatory in regards to financial splits, I'll put my hands up. I didn't realize there was a financial difference.
Oh yeah.
Also, fight dates, 4 weeks notice. I wasn't aware of that as well. And if everybody knows that in the chat, and it's like, yeah, idiot, I'll put my hands up. I'm an idiot.
But 4 weeks. Well, it's closer to 3 weeks. But
yeah, exactly. See,
when it's all said and done, it's easy to, like, you know how agendas work and how quickly one can kind of just rise up and start running. If someone says it in the right way and it catches fire, that's it. The truth isn't as good as the agenda more often than not. And boxing is just kind of run by agendas. So as far as Josh is concerned, like, obviously there might be a bit of noise on the internet, but I don't think anyone with their brain on, who actually knew what was going on, or he should have fought Buatsi, should have fought Biddle, sorry, on short notice. Especially, I'm hearing there was like other little implications in the contract, and you got to be locked in here and there, and it just doesn't make any sense. You know, as a fighter, you get a short career, you kind of got to do exactly what's best for you, because you'll lock yourself. How many times have we seen fighters in a dispute for years? You're just letting your prime just go by, you know, and you're wasting 18 months of like when you might have been at your best, because you signed something that maybe you shouldn't have signed in the first place.
Yeah, fair enough. I hear that, and I don't want to get into any contractual obligations, because obviously there's litigation around that. I'm aware that some things may still be at court, so I'm not even going to touch on that out of obviously respect for obviously the legal proceedings that are going on with that. But going back to obviously, all right then, the Bivol fight, the short notice is crazy. I can't argue with that. When it comes to a possible split, and you know, you talk about the voluntary and the mandatory, and this goes back to Hotshot. If he took that fight, if he did, this is all hindsight now because it hasn't happened, and he won, he may have got that, like you said, it could have been the 50 grand, or it could have been the 1 million out of the 12 million or whatever when it comes to finances. But if he took that bet on himself, whether it's right or wrong, yeah, as in knowing your worth, I get it. We have this conversation. It's something that obviously Anthony Yarde's got into with Tunde Ajayi about worth. If he took that risk and won that fight, what position you look in there now? Okay, he took that risk. He's got paid, not what he should do, but now he becomes the A side. So then that worth switches, and now he's in the driving seat. And this is me playing devil's advocate, because there's still an option. There's still an option to say yes. The short notice, all right, but in an ideal world, 8 weeks notice. Yeah, you're gonna be a voluntary. You're not gonna be a mandatory. You're gonna get a less split. But what if he took that gamble on himself and he won, and then it's him out in Saudi that's set up to fight Artur Beterbiev and blah blah, and then you're talking about that big value coming in. Sometimes taking that pay cut to get where you need to go. Devil's
100%,
advocate.
100%. But like you said, that's the key part. What you said was with the 8 weeks notice.
Yeah, the notice. I can't argue.
So I mean, because he was inactive, so you can't do that in 4 weeks. Well, like Dan said, it was closer to 3 weeks. You can't. It's impossible. That you could hold a good account of yourself, but who cares about that? You're supposed to. You're an Olympian. You're not gonna get blasted away, but you're gonna hold a good account of yourself. But we're not here for that. That's what Yard and that do. They hold a good account of themselves. We don't do that. You know what I'm saying? They talk about timing. Well, if that was timing,
Yeah.
why did you get KO'd by a jab? If that was meant to be good timing for you, you got KO'd by a jab by someone that's a known drunk in the industry. How? I can tell you now. I'll tell you now. Anybody top 5, top 10 would have beat Kovalev that night. I'm telling you that now.
What makes you so confident,
100%.
Dwayne?
Because I've watched the fight and I saw how well Yard was doing.
Okay.
But then he had someone in his ear tell him to empty the tank at round 8. And then he had someone saying lines in the camp instead of giving him instructions. And then his next fight, they bring in another trainer who's got MBE. Talks for itself. Anybody, because of what Yard done with poor instructions, I know anybody in top 5, maybe top 10 would have beat Kovalev that night. Batalia, that's a whole different story.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a whole different story. But
Mm.
that, and again, they did not. None of those fights for him were voluntary. They were both mandatory. Now, this is what's key. I'll leave this as a hypothetical question. You can think about the answer yourself. Look at the people he's beat. Everybody that Yard has beaten, anybody British top 10 can beat those fighters. None of those fighters lead you to a world title, but he's got 2 mandatory world title shots. How did that happen, bro? None of those people lead you to a world title, but he got 2 mandatory world titles.
But then
That's why when he's lost those world titles shots, he's still in the top 10 because it was mandatory. If it was voluntary, he would drop all the way below, probably about 15, 20. If it's voluntary. But because he's mandatory, it gives weight. So he's dropped and he's still in the top 10. 2 world title shots where you've had no fights that lead you to the world title. Everybody in the British top 10, maybe 15, can beat the people you have beaten. The one domestic fight you had to rematch him, and that was
Lyndon Arthur. Yeah.
And that was not to put down Lyndon Arthur, but that was only the Commonwealth. When does Commonwealth bring you to a world title?
Okay.
I've never seen that. Maybe I'm missing something out. Master knowledge, Fearon probably can tell us when that does, but it's very few and far between. But Yard got 2 world title shots from beating nobody. Like anybody that he's beaten, I would easily take that as a comeback fight. Give me 8 weeks and I'll take that as a comeback fight. And I ain't boxed since 2019.
Listen, let me jump in the chat while that's marinating in my head. Zach Katz, Kyoshi, good evening. Zach Katz, good evening to yourself. Moulsey saying Joshua Buatsi, best light heavyweight in the country. We've got Star Fox putting up some laughy emojis. Cockroach running the Yard. Boxing pound for pound. Jack said if Yard swerves, then that Michael Iffert IBF final eliminator for Josh has to be the one. Only Josh has faced Richards and Aziz 2-0. Yard 1-1 versus Arthur. Star Fox jumps back in. That look to the camera was serious. I don't know which one that was. And then obviously we're still talking about cockroaches in the corner. Jesus, saludos back to yourself. You know them ways when the pest becomes immune to the pesticide and stares you down. Let's have a look. I can't even imagine what better fight there is for Yard besides Josh. Talking A side, B side, confused face. Joshua Buatsi had a mural on the side of a house in Selhurst and seemingly had the world at his feet. His career has been frustrating to watch since that point, and I will echo that because I'm one of these that literally has ran my mouth probably sometimes a bit too much about Joshua Buatsi and done myself no real favors, but it's only because I want to see him succeed. Dan Costello, let's face it, who has Josh faced? What elite level has he faced? And that's in capitals, so I take it he's quite angry with
I'll
that.
answer that. Yeah. I just explained as to why he hasn't boxed anyone at which you want to see is elite level, but he's boxed everybody that he's supposed to box. But just like, for example, when he boxed Kalic, there was other people that turned down the fight, but people don't realize Kalic is an Olympian as well. Yeah, people this was behind closed doors. People didn't realize that Kalic is Olympian. He's a good caliber fighter. He's boxed Spider there, which also was a world level fight. But just because they're both from the UK, people are not recognizing that. He boxed Dan, which is a world level fight. These people lead you to world titles. Everybody wants to say, oh yeah, but he took a chance. That's right. He took a chance because they gave him a mandatory chance, not voluntary. If it's voluntary, he'd have fallen all the way down the ranks. A mandatory chance. He took a swing at the bat without preparation. So what? And he got paid. Well done. That's good. We all love a trier. Britain seems to love losers. That's what's happening. He's been commended for getting KO'd. He didn't lose by split decision or whatever. People say he put a good account of himself. So what? You're supposed to. You're not meant to. That's nothing. That's what we're here for. He went up and got KO'd twice. One was by sheer exhaustion, which I think Yarde would have won that fight. Yeah. I think he could have won. Beat Kovalev. Yeah. The other one, it's debated, not from my words, but it's debatable whether or not he could have got up or not. It looked like he gave up from Beterbiev because he was doing well. But people say like he's not taking a knee, he's looking around. He wasn't on his back, was he? When he got stuck by Beterbiev, he wasn't on his back. He was on his knee, and he didn't stand up. What do you call that?
This is what is going to happen until they eventually get in the ring together. It's just going to be this for the next however long.
100%.
I've said it for ages though. You know, I think obviously I rate both of them super high. I've always fancied Josh over Yarde for however many years. I rate Yarde, yeah. But I always said there was a lack of data on Yarde, in terms of he beats, like you said, everyone who's in who he's supposed to beat and who everyone else will beat as well. And then boom, up to the big Russian monsters. And there's nothing in between. So I can't really tell where he sits. And I think even on your channel, I said, I'm not even completely certain he's number 2. And there's nothing to say that Spider's not. You know what I'm saying? Because
we have had this debate about Spider, to be fair.
We've had, like, I don't know, I haven't seen him in the domestic wars against the people that, you know, maybe could beat him. I only see him in fights that he absolutely should win, and then fights where, I wonder if he could pull it off, and I never see anything in between. But
we've seen that grey area, and that is spot on. And you know, if any Anthony Yarde fans or Anthony Yarde or Tunde or Spencer, anybody's listening in, that's one of the things that everyone's saying. There is no in between. It's either you're at the top of the game, and shout out to Frank Warren for getting those shots for him, because he's really looked after him, and that's why I'm like confused with what's going on with all this contract business. Or it's just like you said, Hot Shot, you said you could have 8 weeks and you jump in there, and as in no disrespect, you're a boxer, you can say that. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, what is going on in between? And it's like when these British fighters are mentioned, you know, it's like, oh, he's too good for them. But are you? We need to see those tests. And Joshua Buatsi and Anthony Yarde is that test. From when I knew that Yarde wasn't going out to Saudi, I was like, it's got to be the JB fight, the fight that everyone's been talking about forever.
And why is that? Why he's not going out there? That would have been mad easy for him. Why didn't he go out there to do this 5-on-5? Why? Exactly because of what you just said. Would you get exposed without the pay? I even whispers in the dark. I don't know, but I heard that before the 2 WBO shots he's had, he was offered the Bivol himself. Before the 2 WBO shots. Why they both WBO? There's rumors behind the WBOs, but there were 2 WBO shots he had. I heard he got a WBA offer. He didn't take it. And like you said, there was rumors around the 5-on-5. He was going to be part of that. Why wasn't you? Because you weren't in a rush to sign to box Josh. which are probably there's whispers already. People know I'm gonna let it cat out of the bag. He was supposed to be on the 15th of June. Didn't
We
happen.
presumed, and that
Yeah,
would have been a classic.
it didn't happen. Why, Mister? Get me, Mister. I
So,
don't. What? Anyway, I'm not ever gonna start mimicking no one, but I'm scared. It is what it is.
like you
I'm just
said,
talking
say
the
he
facts.
needs. Well, at the end of the day, like you said, you've heard on the podcast, whatever, that we do need someone to speak up for JB, because we see him doing, his training. He's like a student, isn't he? He's always training. He's very studious. And then when I seen like he's starting to at people on Twitter or X, we don't see Joshua Buatsi do that. It's like my man like jumped out his bed one day and chose violence. He's like, yo, where you at? Then I'm seeing crazy videos on Sky Sports where it's a voiceover, and then it's like the like Yarde's like doing some dancing in the background while my man's dancing. I'm like, what is going on here? And you can see the frustration now. It's like Buatsi left one promotional company to move to another because he wanted to be more active or whatever his reasons were. And he's come over, he's had a couple of fights, and it's like he's back stagnant. So I get it. He's pissed.
I wouldn't say stagnant, because there's still loads of fights and things out there. Look, everyone wanted the Yard fight. Before Saudi got involved in boxing, there was absolutely zero chance of that fight anyway, probably because Matchroom and Queensbury just did not do any business. I know the past 12 months can make people forget what's happened for the last 10 years, but that's just what the reality was anyway. Him coming over here probably made the Yard fight much more feasible. And now it looks like it actually can happen, if not for whatever's going on the other side. Once they clear that up, then it is all systems go. We know what fight Joshua wants, and we know Yard's been there at the top level and lost twice. And fortunately, he's done it in a way where the Buatsi fight still is there and means something, and it still stands for something. But it has to be that fight, obviously. That
But
fight.
what's Josh going to do in the meantime, though? Because, it has to be that fight. But we know that contractual disagreement, especially if there's potential litigation involved, that can take years. What happens to Buatsi?
You can't wait. There's plenty of other opportunities.
Yeah, there are opportunities. We've hashed out what the opportunities are. And one of the audience actually mentioned one of the opportunities, because the issue that we've got is with the belts tied up between the two people, you get your mandatory, you get your order of mandatories, and the IBF mandatory is before the WBA mandatory. So what that person said about taking on the IBF guy, that would make sense, because you would then be first in line, rather than you now got to wait for if there's a potential rematch, potential trilogy, or if the belts scatter, then
Which is a
no problem.
potential.
Yeah, there's no problem, because you're that mandatory, he's IBF mandatory, then everyone's fine. But if they stay together, I'm maybe the IBF might order their mandatory, and then they relinquish that title, and then the winner has the WBA, and then Josh is next. So there's a lot of variables that makes you worth kind of bumbling under, rather than making rash decisions.
Running the risk, and that this is one thing that I will say, is Saudi has got a massive, almost like an infiltration into the sport right now, and there's other names that are being mentioned for potential the winner, even though obviously Beterbiev's off sick now, so he's got to go and heal, etc. They've got a replacement, but there was other names being mentioned, aka David Benavidez, aka Morel Jr. You've got other fighters that are coming into the mix, and that is why I was kind of like going back to the beginning and saying, what if he took that chance? What if he would be in that position to have those key fights? But you've got people jumping over, because obviously His Excellency is there with the change, with the cash, to say, yo, I like the look of this fighter. It doesn't matter about necessarily order, etc. Like, we've got this strict condition where we go up the rankings, we put ourselves into positions. He's like, I like that fighter at 175. Yeah, I think I'll match that fighter at 175. And then the grafters, the ones that have been working or maybe turned down opportunities, they're at the bottom of the pile anyway, because it's not even about the belts anymore.
But that's it. But then you've got the organizations where they got their, like you said, their mandatory positions. And while he's still WBA mandatory, is no right. Like for example, where Batavia's had the injury, again, that's like he's still got to go to Saudi, acclimatize, start training. It's less than 3 weeks. You see what I mean? And again, why would you put yourself in that position? It was contemplated, we discussed it, but you want to do things properly. It's a business, and like Dan said, it's one career. So you don't want to waste your mandatory. Like, for example, as I was saying, the WBC's done their mandatory.
Yeah.
WBA, well, it wasn't a mandatory, but it was against what's his name? Lyndon Arthur. Yeah, the WBO we've done with Yarde.
Yeah.
So the only one left is the IBF. So it's likely that they're going to pull their mandatory first. You see what I mean? So it's worth waiting.
It's
and
annoying.
At the same time, if the wait,
you kind of got to wait. You can't do anything but wait to see what happens. Because if they don't, because then you have to make a kind of a quick decision, but you have to wait and see if they call that mandatory.
But then this is, and I'm going to push this back on you now, Savage, because we've got everyone. We've got Golden Boy, we've got Dimitri Salita, we've got Eddie Hearn, we've got Frank Warren, we've got Wasserman, we've got everyone working together. And yes, everyone's going to say, "Oh, but Coley fought on the side." I don't care about that. What's going to happen? Are you going to be able to now potentially maneuver and start to do some work with His Excellency? You mentioned that, you've had offers from Saudi before and it's got to work for everybody. But surely to God, you're going to want your guys to now start to get a piece of that pie and start, like you said, this IBF,
sometimes it's a piece of a pie, and sometimes everyone knows what it is with Saudi. Is I won't say they're overpaying for fights, but they're overpaying for fights, and they
know your worth, my guy.
I don't know, man, because we're talking about. I mean, obviously, I don't want to start throwing names out there, but people that have, had a career best 50 grand, getting 500 grand to go and lose in whatever fashion. Yes, it's good for their pocket for that moment, but what it does to a fighter's hunger, their career, and what they are after that is it's not the same person. You don't have the same drive, motivation. I just don't think you even wake up the same the next day. And I've seen it a couple times now, and I think it's good financially, but I think it's dangerous for a fighter in general when you haven't gone through the ranks and you are kind of one of the lucky dip winners. It's good financially, it's great, and it's the best payday you're ever going to get, most probably. But is that the end of your career in many ways? That fight, you take it on 3 weeks' notice or 4 weeks' notice. You don't take it on your terms, but you take it because of the paycheck. And yes, it's a prize fighting sport, but it's not the reason everyone put on gloves in the first place. Everyone.
Yeah, no, they're just spot on. Because as I always say, you could win the title, but you're there to keep it. You don't just want to be a flyby champion because you got him on the off night, or you took a chance and the stars aligned. God was with you. Where they say punch from the gods. What about the ones coming up after that? You want to have a legacy, not just you had the title for what do you call it, 6 months before they push for you to defend it. You're here to be a champion, a real champion, not flyby. So you've just got one on your mantelpiece, and then you don't box, and you keep putting out your Instagram videos like you're gonna box soon. We've seen that so many times with these fighters, and they do their videos, they're watching TV, and they've belts on their mantelpiece, but they ain't boxed for 3-4 years.
The problem is with risks. Risks are great if they come off right. If you take a fight on short notice and you're the Terence Crawford and you're like, I was ready already, and like the opportunity just met with the preparation and whatever. But you get it wrong. You get that risk wrong, and everyone's going to be sitting there saying, "Why did you take that risk?" And that's just how we work. This is what I'm
We've
saying.
seen it. We've seen it.
So sometimes you've got to have a sensible hat on, or just kind of like literally look at it properly, pros and cons, likelihood of something going right or wrong, and make a decision. But if it goes wrong, that's a long road back.
But then when you're looking at it, and like I said, I always play devil's advocate. Everyone's got a price, right? I remember I was speaking to Joshua Buatsi when when he just signed, and he said, "I bet you're looking at me like saying it was 1.5 million. Why didn't he take that? To fight Bivol? We could have won." Joshua was answering questions that hadn't even asked yet because he knew what was coming. It's like you were crazy to turn down that deal. But he said he has his reasons, and we have this moral code with some fighters. I don't know the full ins and outs of it, but we get some fighters that have got this moral code. I think even Ben Whittaker's mentioned it. Hold on a minute. I've grafted. I've done all of this in the Olympics. I've come out, and then anybody can get an opportunity. Anybody can just shout their mouth off and have an opportunity. What's happened to almost like this pecking order? But I do believe, guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're moving away from that. Even the importance of the belts seems to be fading. Even His Excellency now, he's managed to partner up. I think it's with the WBA, possibly the WBC, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. And it's sort of like he's buying into that. So, okay, if you want a belt, I've got something to do with it. However, it's like prize fighting. It's almost like, the winner stays on. It's that tournament kind of style boxing where we just want to see somebody's head get caved in. Everyone gets paid well. Everyone goes home. But the traditionalist side of boxing seems to be fading.
It's dangerous though, because what happens? Look, at the moment, His Excellency's he's enjoying it. Yeah, you can tell it's his thing. But what happens if he wakes up one day and it's not? So do you see what I'm saying? Like, what happens then when he's kind of maybe potentially a bit bored of boxing? I don't know what that looks like, because right now he is able to kind of click his fingers and be like, "No, I want that fight and that fight and that fight." And obviously, money makes the world go round, and it's just one of those things. But it is potentially like what happens when that's not there, because we have to go back to that pecking order, and there is a hierarchy, and there's a reason that people are better than others, and why the better fighters get the better rewards, etc., etc., etc. So I think it's sometimes dangerous to not have that pecking order.
Hot Shot, what do you think? Oh, you mute. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. No sound. Unless it's me again.
No, I can't remember.
Yeah,
now.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think there's a point where, like you're saying, that where we've got the organizations in the boxing and people have worked their way up, like what you mentioned, what Ben Whittaker was saying, there has to be a point where they step in and say, "Look, that's enough. These people, I understand you're giving them money, you're making these dreams come true, but these guys have been grafting." So there is going to be a point where it has to slow down and become a fair sport again, because it's basically what it is. You would say it's fair for the ones that are getting the opportunities, but what about the ones that have been grafting? They're just being overlooked because they're not the fights that His Excellency wants to see. You see what I mean? But they've actually earned them fights. So there's a point where it has to slow down, or everyone else gets brought into it. There's going to be no promotions that are left out of this Saudi world. You know what I mean? That's the only way around it. Either the organizations are going to start ordering what they want to happen and say, "Look, this can't happen." I know that, was it Batai? He said, "You know what? Forget, you can kick it, but I'm doing this Saudi thing." But if that happens, that happens.
But he's going to try and get it back off.
That's
obviously,
the thing. And I was going to say,
fight,
because he's good enough to get it back. That's why you don't care. You know what I mean? So but you get to that point where, yeah, the people, it'll be on the other side of the foot where they say, no, 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 no. This person needs to have their shot. You know what I mean? Even if it got to the point where, I don't know, they stopped sanctioning those events because it's unfair for the ones that have been working hard.
Yeah. Saudi have fixed one problem, but in doing so, they kind of created another. Because we all know that a lot of fights weren't getting made quickly enough because of promotional this and that, and Saudi kind of eradicated that problem because they just made people work together who maybe would never have worked together anyway. But in doing so, they've made another issue potentially where now it's people are talking about Saudi as if it is just a money grab. And that's where you have to be a little bit careful with it.
When you say that it's like just a money grab, I don't care, because I will never get a penny of those fighters' purses. What I like about what's happening out there is, you know, like you've both said, we're getting fights that necessarily wouldn't happen. And Sav, I'll say this, obviously you are a boxer. Do you feel like you guys are left out? And are you saying that because you feel a little bit like we're not invited to the party? Why you'd say that? Because I'm happy that the fights are getting made.
I'm happy that some of these fights are getting made as well. There are some fights that obviously probably you shouldn't be seeing.
Like Zhang Parker, big fight.
Yeah, no, there's some great fights. Zhang Parker, you could
and Zhang Wilder
make it. Yeah, he's making great fights, but you probably would have been able to make those fights anyway. Those couple of fights, but no, I don't feel like we don't feel left out. We just got here, you know. And whilst you know,
stand on your business with that, Sav, because I know that boxer get a lot of stick. You got to stand on it with that. You've got to stand on it.
Years. We're working against monsters in this industry. Do you know what I'm saying? Like people who have ran the show for ages. So, you know, whether we look like we're doing well or not, trust me, we are. Do you know what I'm saying? So when it's all said and done, it kind of allows us not necessarily being at the party, allows us to focus on British fights. And I feel like that's where we're getting our wins anyway. You know, we're trying to put on the biggest fights here because obviously not everyone can get on a plane and fly to Saudi, and whatever it is. So we're domestically doing everything that we can, and we're trying to make sure that we're making fights and cards that the fans want to see, and that we're giving good value, and that not everything's on pay-per-view, and etc. etc. So yeah, when it's all said and done, would we eventually like to be on some of these Saudi cards with our fighters on there? Yeah. And by the way, I was in Saudi last May with Ben Whittaker. So he was on the card. You know what I'm saying? So it's not, obviously it's easy. Agendas are super easy to kind of make run. But it's not all what people think, oh, they're being left out. Like, oh, no one wants to work with them. It's not that. It's definitely not that. We were there when AJ fought Usyk the second time round. Ben Whittaker was on that card. We've had offers. And sometimes it just doesn't make enough sense, and one will, and maybe it won't, and who knows, bro. But like when it makes sense, we'll do it, and we'll be there. Obviously, the 5v5 Queensbury versus Matchroom makes it look very much like, oh, boxer are not involved in this, but it's just a really good idea, man. I'm intrigued to see it as well. I'm a boxing fan. Before I'm anything, I'm a boxing fan. If it's good fights, I want to see them.
Yeah, we know this because we know that obviously you've done the JD work and you've done work with Matchroom as well. You were one of the key interviewers of AJ before many others got in with him. So Sav, I'll never ever, doubt that you're a boxing fan, but I will always try and like weigh up the balance to say, well, how does it look from this side? And can you see like sometimes where the fans are coming from? In business, there's always going to be, I get it, you could say the new kids on the block, but it's have boxer got that, like the balls, one for a better word, to stand up there and weather everything that's coming at them. Because I'll tell you straight, Ben Shalom hasn't helped himself by pulling back away from the media when there was so much going on. And it's like everyone's asking you questions, including me, or people are asking Eddie Hearn questions that only Ben Shalom can answer. And it's like, or none of that helped.
Yeah.
Is it?
Also, Ben's a lot young. These guys are a lot older and a lot longer in the tooth than Ben. And at times it does, you know how it goes. It does at times look, seem, feel like a witch hunt. And it can very easily become one of those. And it doesn't take long, a couple of weeks for the whole boxing industry to start pointing a finger at you and be like, you're this or you're that, or that's not true, or this is it doesn't take long.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long for it to spin back around as well and the status quo to change. So Ben does a lot of work here. I know it looks like he's just the promoter, but he does behind the scenes and all of that. He does more than your average promoter, put it that way. Yeah, like Frank will have both his sons. Eddie's got Frank and whoever else he's got. Ben does quite a lot of stuff. There's probably a lot on his plate for a 30-year-old, let's be honest. So when it's all said and done, sometimes he might make some mistakes, and he's probably gone on your channel and said himself that he could have done things better. And in 10 years' time, those situations will probably come back up, and he will deal with it better. And this is just how experience is, how it works.
But then this can all center back around Joshua Buatsi. Hotshot, you look at a career plan, to get Joshua to that world title level, that is in world title level, as in having that world title fight. We know where he is, as in his caliber. But what is the plan? And I'll put it to Hotshot and then I'll put it to Savage. What is the strategy around Joshua Buatsi so the fans can get behind him and like support him like how we used to all those years ago when, JB was like, is the next best thing?
Well, that's it. We're no longer. It's sort of just trying to kick in that door. So we are basically demanding those fights, demanding the fights to make. Because you're saying that the career is long. You don't want to end up you having your peak in the gym. You see what I mean? So we had our plan from the moment he turned pro, and there's been a few delays or whatever. So we're literally kicking down that door. And as Savage was just saying, Ben Shalom, he seems very receptive and he's trying to make things happen. So it's literally just making those noises. Like you said, you've seen the change in Josh's attitude, even on social media, because it was more of a basically, we now taking that approach of the fighter is actually the boss, and that's what it is. So we need to make sure what he wants is happening, rather than it was more like a partnership. And if you think so, and yeah, but you was a bit new to the pro game. We all kind of were, because I was on the small hall shows and whatever. I only done 2 actual promotion fights, so it's was still learning the game, and it's almost not to say you was getting taken advantage of, but you started to learn the negative side of it, and you've been a victim of the negative side of it. So now it's time to make your career work for you. How do you want it to happen? And that's what we're doing. We're just having the right conversations and pushing for it. And like Savage was saying, Ben Shalom, and he's kind of proved that with other boxers as well. He's trying his best, and is exactly where he said they're new in the business. Again, they want to prove themselves, so they're making certain fights happen. They're putting certain stops out that were unable to happen. They've done it in a couple fights, so just making the right noises so that we can prove who we are. We know who we are, but to prove who we are, and like I said, it's that Joe was saying, just business. When the bell goes, he's proving it. But too many people are talking, and the innocent people are believing the hype, believing the foolishness. So again, I've been wanting to talk for ages, but I've been doing the just business too. And I said, you know what? Nah.
Let go.
It's not that. It's not that, because I can still get a point across. Like I said it earlier on in this broadcast. I'm an educated man. I don't need to throw insults. I don't need to try to belittle anyone to get my point across like the other side have been doing. Nah, I'm just gonna talk the facts of what you presented to us. The facts of what you're doing. Lay it all out. If I put it down in a timeline, tell me who you are. You're opportunist. You've been given opportunities and you've taken them. Okay. We're still working and proving ourselves. Get me? We're not being given a 3 weeks notice and say, oh, let's take the opportunity. Oh, let's make a good account of ourselves. No, man. Too much sacrifice. We've been doing it for too long to be just for someone to throw dollar signs at us and we go, oh my God, no, man. That's for you. Because you're what, 12 fight novice, white collar fighter. You know you don't deserve to be here. So you take them opportunities. You know what I'm saying? But
Cutting.
when you box Buatsi, someone asked me before, it's gonna be Josh's hardest bout? No, it's not. Every fight is the most important fight. As you go, every fight's the most important fight. But I can promise you now, Yard will not be Josh's hardest fight to date. It will not be. And after the fight, I will tell you which one I think was Josh's
Yeah.
hardest fight to date.
I'll be looking forward to that
After the
convo.
fight, because you're gonna see that Yard is not Josh's hardest fight to date. Then you're gonna say, oh, so which one do you think? I will tell you which ones I think, but I'm gonna tell you now before it happens, Yard is not Josh's hardest fight to date. And Mouth of the South, his guy, or Mouth of the East, I should say, they even had the cheek to say what round they're gonna knock Josh out in.
Did they?
How can you quantify that statement? Yeah, that's
No,
how
I
much they're
don't. I
talking.
obviously missed that. I must have missed that.
That's how much they quantify. I can quantify that statement. It's becoming laughable. But like I said, it's not Yard doing it. It's the giggling guy. Come on, man.
The giggling guy. I'm going to be blocked off everything now. Savage. Joshua Buatsi is there. Is in front of you. How many in the next 12 months? How many fights can we expect Joshua Buatsi to have? When you look at we need targets, we need progression, we need movement. Yes, he can get paid. We're not interested in that. We want to see him fight.
Yeah, I think he's got to have
12
three.
months.
I think he has to have three. I think if he could squeeze in four, that would be great. I just think the problem is that Josh is in that place where he needs big fights as well. It's not just fights anymore. That's the problem. So big fights, it's hard to get 4 of those in a year. In fact, it's hard to get 3 of those in a year. So 3 is ideal if you could do that in 12 months. I think 3 is for elite fighters is what they all kind of would aim at. If they could do 3 a year, that makes the most sense in an ideal world. But like I've said, the maths in boxing is not real math. You can't do that adding up. It doesn't work like that. You might have to wait for a couple of months, and then the answer after that couple of months that might not even be the answer you wanted. Now you got to look around. Now you need a date. All these different things. In an ideal world, I think 3. I hope he gets out 3 times. I'm sure Hotshot will want him out 3 times as well. We need fit and active Joshua Buatsi. That's it. Because that feeling of winning, after you beat Dan Aziz, you're on top of the world. You have that winning feeling, and the longer you're out of the ring, the less that feeling is there. So you want to keep,
The momentum.
And how it goes. We don't get younger every day. We're getting older. You don't want to go past your peak. Not leaving your best behind you. Do you know what I mean? So 3 times in the next 12 months, I think that makes a lot of sense. But obviously, when sometimes you sit around for months and months waiting for the big one, and this might be where we are right now. So we'll just see how it goes.
So obviously we know that he's not going to be out on June the 15th. That was the card that I wanted to definitely see him on, because he's starting to stack up very nice for an outdoor card as well, stadium fight. How's Josh getting on knowing that he's not going to be on that card? Hotshot, how's he coping with it? Like I said, with the call outs, Sky Sports on the socials saying, basically, yo, Wagwan, where you at? How's he coping with that, knowing now, yet again, he's on the bench, he's on reserves?
Yeah, I think it's a bit disappointed because it's your hometown, and that would have been ideal, like a little homecoming. He's travelled all up and down the
Yeah.
country, whatever. The closest he's boxed is O2, so that's literally your hometown. So it'd have been good. But to be fair, in that sense, he's sort of prepared because before it was announced, we kind of knew that this was gonna happen. So the disappointment kind of faded. because again, it's not boxer's fault why it's not on it. It's the other side. So it's that kind of disappointment. Not I've been let down. It's almost, are you a coward? What is the hold up? First of all, they wanted an extra bout. I'm going to be straight frank. First of all, they wanted an extra bout. Yeah, this is what it is. And then there's contractual issues. But the first one was they wanted an extra bout, although they boxed a week apart from each other. So they're both ready. They're both ready for this date. But he wanted an extra bout. And then now there's contractual issues. Come on, man. Please. Come on, man. Hate on me, man. I'm going to be talking the truth for the people. You're getting some fresh ones, October.
Yeah, unintentionally for that, I just literally wanted to find out what was going on with him because, as you know, I get on with him. He's one of the good guys. Do you know what I mean? I see him just kind of like grafting away. Doesn't really run off his mouth. He's not that type of guy, but it's like we needed to know what's happening because obviously all of this kerfuffle. Let me just read out this super chat from my boy Joshua Prentice. Told me about JB Mandem from Croydon. Have been waiting for JB's work rate and career management to match his talent. You see what I'm saying? It's the frustration. It's not that people are just thinking like, this geezer. It's frustration because we want to see the fans fight. We want to see the fighters fight as fans. I beg your pardon.
Yeah. That's mad. Josh Prentice, he was at our amateur gym. So that's coming from a real source, whoever this guy is. Joshua Prentice was a boxer at our amateur gym way back. So yeah, I can understand what he's saying. Because he obviously knows like what Savage was saying, an active Buatsi is it's a dangerous guy. So he's seen in amateurs, you're active. Coming through, you're active. You box nearly weekly, twice a month, active. So Joshua Prentice has seen. So that is a solid statement there.
Listen, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you to everyone in the chat. It's been an hour. It's gone quickly. Guys, Savage, Dwayne, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the channel today. Hopefully, it's cleared up a few things. We're hoping, just to summarize, obviously, JB was supposed to be on the sellers card. It fell through because of obviously contractual issues, not with obviously JB's side. We're looking at the side of Anthony Yarde and not with his promoter. I have to put that caveat in because Frank Warren has spoken, said he was good to go. Hopefully then we'll get him out. He'll be active soon. We're looking at possibly 3 fights within the next 12 months, potential belt scattering. There's options out there, but you're going to work hard to make sure that he's an active fighter.
I'll say one more thing just to back what you said, where you said Frank was ready. We actually had a meeting. I'm letting you know it's the other side. We actually had a meeting. You see, of the day of Yard's last fight, we had a loose meeting. So everything was verbal. There was nothing on paper, but it was just to make sure what comes in contracts we're kind of happy with. Yeah. So it was a loose
And that was
conversation,
fine. But
and it was fine. On why do you think Josh went up to ringside? Because it seemed like something was happening. That's not his
Yeah,
style. It was seemed like something was happening.
yeah.
And then I'm just being honest. Like I'm saying, the facts are laid itself out, and I'm not saying anything that's slanderous or libel or there's any contract, right? Because there's no contract. This is what the things that's happened. But you talk so much. I remember the giggling guy said that Josh is a rat in Peckham. See, these are the kind of things that I said, no, we need to start. He said he's a cornered rat in Peckham whose only option is Yard. No, he's the mandatory. Yard is below Josh in all of the governing bodies, all of the organizations. Josh doesn't need Yard, but it's a fight that makes sense, that the people want to see, that the people will pay for, and that will silence everybody. So we're doing that fight. But really, he doesn't need Yard. He's below him, which was from his own promoter's mouth.
It's
Come
a
on, man,
it's a
please.
yeah it's a
That's so
fan friendly fight. Listen,
exactly.
who knows what is going to happen in the coming weeks? Hopefully, our conversation here might get some things moving. See it as a positive, a nudge in the right direction. Because at the end of
That's
the
it.
day, all we want to do is see our guys out there fighting. There's always going to be a loser. I get it. No one wants to lose, but this is the fight game. There's only ever going to be one winner. Gentlemen, I appreciate your time to the chat. I appreciate you guys as well. Thank you for the super chat, all the questions. Sorry I couldn't get into anything. And the final thing is, it was a cockroach, not a rat. So obviously,
you know exactly what I'm talking
everyone,
about.
it's in the chat. It's in the chat.
hardest.
Everyone's saying cockroach. Everyone's saying cockroach. I know that everyone's going to be scouting around now because maybe there'll be some other lives off the back of this one.
Whatever it is a pest. But he's not pestering no one. He's just working through his career. Come on, man. Let's get this fight on the way.
Peak times.
I'm telling you.
Listen, good night, everyone, and stay ready.
Thank you.